we're always hearing about the new consciousness. I think one thing I want to expand out and scope out is looking at the macro and then go into the micro aspects of how this whole transition is going on. We've had, Gary Zukav on the podcast. He talks about this new consciousness that's emerging for our species right now. And it's like, really, I want to set the context of where we are right now. We're just finishing off 2021. We just came from a very transitional year. 2020 forced us to go back into our houses, look inside. Concept in this podcast that we developed is looking within, tapping into that inner source that we all share. And I guess where I wanted to start with you is acknowledging the significance of what's going on right now in humanity and what you've kind of seen from the external, like from an outside perspective, looking in. Where are we right now as a species?
Well, it's kind of interesting because I travel around the world and I have the opportunity to talk to all kinds of people. And one of the things that, independent of people's beliefs, political beliefs, religious beliefs, whatever, there seems to be a common thread that people feel like something's not right. And I think when you get to a point where you realize that no healthcare plan, no government, no religion is going to take care of you, then who is going to take care of you? And the answer is you, right? So my interest is to give people the tools and the understanding that they could heal their body, that they could create a better life for themselves, that they could overcome past traumas and scars that were created even as early as childhood that tend to be unconscious programs that keep them repeating the same, scenarios in their life, to teach people how to induce mystical experiences so that it changes the frame of the way they look at reality. And so what an amazing time in history to be alive, because consciousness is awareness. And awareness is paying attention, and paying attention is noticing. So if a person lives a life, as an example, and is diagnosed with a health condition, what they're conscious of is just a certain number of choices that they could make based on the past, based on tradition, based on what's worked for normal or natural. But what happens when that person has done the chemotherapy, has done the surgery, has done the radiation, has done the vegan diet, has done the gluten-free diet, has done the ketogenic diet, has done all the things, all the exercise, and they still have the same health condition? It begs the question, if our personality creates our personal reality, and our personality is made up of how we think, how we act, and how we feel, then the present personality who's listening to this podcast has created the present personal reality called their life. Not their ex, not their parents, not their culture. They create their life. So the fundamental question is, if I want to change my life, then that means that I have to change, or nothing changes in my life until I change, right? So the person who's done all these treatments and still faced with a health condition, this is just an example, all of a sudden says, there's got to be another way. There's got to be something else. And so knowledge, information, when we learn knowledge, when we learn information, we make new connections in our brain. That's what learning is. We're forging synaptic connections. But that philosophical, theoretical, intellectual information is void of experience. Someone who takes that knowledge and applies it and personalizes, demonstrates it, initiates that knowledge, is now interested in the truth of the experience of that information. So the person then who becomes conscious that they could actually heal themselves by changing the way they think, the way they act, the way they feel. If I truly go into the experiment of no longer thinking the same way, no longer acting the same way, no longer feeling the same way, and I start thinking about what thoughts I do want to fire and wire in my brain, and if I do it with intention and attention, I'll begin to install neurological hardware. Keep doing it, and it becomes like a software program. It becomes a new voice in your head that goes from I can't to I can. No magic there. If you said, how would greatness live today? What would love look like today? What would be a greater expression of myself in the things that I do? Turns out if you close your eyes and you rehearse in your mind how you're going to be in any aspect of your day, if you're truly present, the brain doesn't know the difference between the inward experience of what you're imagining and the outer real experience. The brain looks like you've already done it. The brain looks like it's already experienced it. Now, do that enough times, the hardware becomes a software program and you start behaving like a different person.
Super athletes do this all
This
the
is
time.
musicians, athletes, dancers, everybody who's good at something is always rehearsing in their mind. That rehearsal is just as important as the physical demonstration. It's priming the brain because the brain is a record of the past. Now you're actually making it a map to the future. You're installing circuits to use. If you said, God, I lived my whole life in guilt. I didn't know it was guilt, in shame or unworthiness and self-doubt, insecurity, fear. And all of a sudden, you're looking at that emotion and you understand that emotion is actually down-regulating genes and creating disease. You figured that out, you read about it, it makes sense. Then all of the hatred, all the anger, all the bitterness you have to someone or something in your past is keeping you connected to the past. So you'd say, can I teach my body emotionally what a new future could feel like before it happens? Not waiting for your wealth to feel abundance or waiting for your relationship to feel love or waiting for your healing to feel gratitude. That's the old model of reality of cause and effect. This is about causing an effect. Turns out if you can elevate your emotional state and you can sustain that emotional state, your body's so objective that it doesn't know the difference between the real life experience that's creating that emotion and that emotion that you're creating by thought alone. Your body's actually believing it's living in a new reality, a new environment. Now, the environment signals the gene. The end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion. That person is actually signaling genes ahead of the environment. Genes make proteins, and proteins are responsible for the structure and function of the body. The expression of proteins is the expression of life. Okay. Every day the person practices going from the old self to the new self. This is what's happening in the world right now. As they start to change and they start unfiring and unwiring and they stop conditioning the body emotionally to the past and practice this, they emerge as a new personality. They become somebody else. And like magic, the disease exists in the old person and there's somebody else. Now here's where consciousness comes in. That person comes to a workshop and they stand on the stage in front of 1,500 people and they tell their story. And everybody in that audience is leaning in. Why? Because they're looking at truth. They're looking at the example.
Someone who just got healed from a chronic
health. I'm talking about stage 4 cancers. I'm talking about Parkinson's disease. I'm talking about rare genetic disorders. And now the person in the audience is becoming conscious of a possibility that they were once unconscious to. And when they see that's possible, it's a 4-minute mile. I mean, 4-minute mile, nobody thought anybody could break a mile in under 4 minutes. They said it was biologically and physiologically impossible. 1,400 people have done it already. So like, this is the 4-minute mile. Someone's piercing through a limitation, a level of unconsciousness. And now that's a footprint in the quantum field. But in 3-dimensional reality, you're looking at that person and they look no different than anybody else. And the person says, if that person can do it, I can do it as well. Now, all of a sudden, what's emerging in the world now because of information is teaching people that there are other possibilities that they were unconscious to. And you don't need an authority any longer. You don't need a priest. You don't need a governor. You don't need a teacher. You don't need a doctor to gain information any longer. Information is available. But the question is, what will you do with it? So if you give people sound scientific information, and science is the language of mysticism, and you combine quantum physics with neuroscience and neuroendocrinology and psychoneuroimmunology and epigenetics and electromagnetism and make it simple, And don't talk about tradition or religion or culture. That's going to divide an audience, but bring the model of science in. If that person can reason and understand what they're doing with that information and why they're doing it, then the side effect of how they're doing it is going to get easier. And now the application becomes essential. So what we're seeing is this emergent consciousness where people are taking their power back and not relying on anyone or anything for their own personal change or transformation. And I think that when you get enough people doing it, emergence in biology is a group of birds all moving in the same direction, of a school of fish all moving. The appearance is a larger organism. They're behaving in the exact same way. There's no leader. When you study that in biology, everybody's leading. So how are we going to change the world? It's not one person, not one consciousness. It's a collective consciousness. And the research says that collective networks of observers determine reality. Get enough people believing in possibility, sooner or later, someone's going to run into that experience. And you need one. And once you know it's possible, then other people will start doing it as well, just like the 4-minute mile. So in the world right now, I think we're seeing a breaking down of so many conventions, whether it's religion or medicine or the environment or journalism. Everything's falling apart right now because it can't sustain itself, because no organisms in nature live in this kind of abusive competition. Organisms survive in cooperation and connection and communion. Keep people in fear, keep them angry, keep them in pain, keep them all those survival emotions. You'll never have community. You bring people into an elevated emotional state, something innate in the human species says we're empathic to one another, and we celebrate one another. We want to get along with one another. We want to cooperate. We want to resolve issues together. That's who we are when we're not living in stress and survival.
Yeah, that's amazing. Hello, beautiful people. I wanted to introduce you guys to the company that made this episode possible. My great friend Matt Maruka and his team at Raw Optics have crafted one of the most beautiful and essential products that I own. The blue light blocking glasses have been an absolute game changer for me as I wear them religiously, the day and night lenses, so I can relax naturally, sleep like a baby at night, and wake up feeling super energized the next day. You see, science has shown that light from artificial sources like the light bulbs or screens are actually harmful to our body. They can also disrupt your body's circadian rhythm, especially one of the most important sleep hormones, which is melatonin. Using these glasses, apart from making you look like a celebrity superstar, will actually protect you from all the harmful frequencies of light that are making you less productive, more tired, and irritated. Stay tuned, because toward the middle of this episode, we'll actually bring on the founder and CEO of Raw Optics to give us a little take on why he started this amazing company that I deeply believe in. Wait, you said you want one? You said you want one? You said like I need to get one of those? Head over to rawoptics.com and choose from any of their frames and use our code JUSTTAPIN at checkout and get 15% off from any of your purchases. All right, everyone. Enjoy this masterclass with one of the world's greatest teachers of our time. And we hear you talk about this invisible field that we're all connected to. And as young people, we've been brought up with certain programs. And as we had your friend Dr. Bruce Lipton on the show, he explained to us how by year 7, all these programs are hardwired, and then after that we have to consciously go in there, tap into our subconscious, and then change them. And we think that to get what we desire, the life that we want, that new self, we have to go in a linear path to get it, right? And the way that you explain it, and I'm gonna allow you to explain the quantum model of reality, but just to give an example, if I wanted to get a job straight out of college right now, and I said, all right, I have to fill my resume, make it perfect, send it to 100 companies, and hopefully I'll get an answer, I'll get an acceptance. That's linear thinking. How is there a different way to approach that if we want to create a job, a relationship, anything that we desire?
That's a great point. So let's unpack that in two ways, okay? First, I think people actually do create programs even past the age of 7. I mean, because a program is something that you've done so many times that you no longer have to consciously think about it. It becomes unconscious. So then 95% of who we are is those unconscious programs. So then becoming conscious of your unconscious self, or how many times do we have to forget and go unconscious till we stop forgetting and start remembering? That means the person who's blaming and complaining and feeling sorry for themselves and judging others, for the most part, that's a program. They're not conscious that they're doing that. They've just done it so many times that it's automatic, right? So if the person wants to truly make the change, then they have to really become conscious of those unconscious states. Now, meditation is one of the tools that we use because meditation is a great way to get beyond the analytical mind and get into the operating system where those subconscious programs exist. So if your conscious mind, 5% of your total mind, and then you have your subconscious mind, which is 95% of how we've been programmed. And what separates the conscious mind from the subconscious mind is the analytical mind. And meditation is a great way to teach people how to slow their brain waves down. And just like anything else, it's a skill. The more you practice, the better you get at it. And if you can slow your brain waves down into this right creative state, then you can rewrite a program. Then you can install a new track. You can rehearse a new way of being, right? Now, a person who wants to become wealthy or get the job of their dreams, they still have to fill out all those applications and they still have to apply because that's the process in this three-dimensional reality. Now, everything that's in this three-dimensional reality, whether it's an object or a thing or a body or a person or a place we're sitting, everything gives us the illusion of separation. I'm here and you're there and there's space and time between us. So the way we function in three-dimensional reality is if I'm aware that I'm sitting here and I want to walk to the other side of the room to the door over there, I become aware that I'm here, but I'm separate from that other point of awareness over there. And the way I get from here to there is I have to do something. So in this plane of demonstration, I got to move through space. I got to move my body through space. And when I move through space, it takes time. So time is a function of moving through space, one point of consciousness to another point of consciousness. The thought of me being here and the experience of me being there takes time, cause and effect. But then there's me here, I'm sitting here, then I have my dream job, right? And my brain automatically creates my job somewhere out in my future over there. I'm separate from it, right? So I'm separate from my future, just like I'm separate from something else. And so then the only way that I can get to that future is I got to do a lot of things. I got to work hard, I got to fill out applications, I got to talk to the right people, I got to go on interviews. And this is how we function in three-dimensional reality.
Is that like a masculine perspective?
No, it's just the way we function in the world, right? So everything we want is going to take time and energy, right? Because really, we're matter trying to change matter. And if you're matter trying to change matter, it's just going to take time. And when it doesn't work, and you get angry and frustrated and impatient, try to manipulate outcomes, we fight for outcomes, we compete for outcomes because we're matter trying to change matter. Now, learn the skills, make the right choices, make the right sacrifices, and meet the right people, and in time, you may get that job. Nothing wrong with that. That's how we create in this three-dimensional world. There's an invisible field of energy that exists beyond this relative space and time. And there's no objects there, There's no people there, there's no bodies, there's no things, there's no places, there isn't even time, right? Now that's a really big concept for people to wrap their mind around because it's nothing material there, nothing physical. It's a vacuum, void of anything material. What we learned in our research is that if you teach people how to take their attention off of everything physical and material, everything known, there comes a moment where the brain begins to switch and we put our attention, instead of on matter, we put our attention on energy. And the quantum field is an invisible field of energy, of frequency, that's filled, fertile with possibility and information. So now, this invisible field of energy connects everything physical and material. In fact, most people, when they study matter, they see matter as emitting a field. But according to the quantum, it's not matter that's emitting the field, it's actually the field that's slowing down in frequency and creating matter. Okay, now if you can reverse that and get a person to a point where they're not their face, they're not their culture, they're not their age, they're not their profession, they're not their diet, they're not a son, or they're not a mother, they're not aware of their cell phone, they're not aware of their car, they're literally, their attention is completely in the present moment. They walk through this little door, they pass through the eye of the needle, and they enter this realm of the quantum. Now, if you teach people how to create from the quantum field instead of from matter, then if they do that properly and they understand the science of how, then they no longer have to go anywhere to get what they want. In other words, when a person can create the right type of energy, the right type of frequency from the field, and there's a vibrational match between their energy and whatever they want in their life, all of a sudden they start drawing experiences to them. Out of nowhere, they get the phone call, hey, I got
synchronicity.
A synchronicity. Why? Because you're synchronizing your energy to a possibility in your life. Now, in the quantum, every thought has a frequency. So when a person has the thought of their new job and they can feel the frequency of that thought, it wouldn't be lack, it wouldn't be separation, it wouldn't be frustration. The frequency of the thought of a new job would create the feeling of euphoria, excitement, bliss, gratitude. And thoughts tend to be electric in the quantum field, and feelings tend to be magnetic. And now we teach people how to create a Wi-Fi signal when they connect to the field, and they literally change their energy. The thought being the electrical charge, the feeling being the magnetic charge, and how you think and how you feel is broadcasting energy. Now, there's a little bit more that has to happen because you have to have coherence in your brain. The brain's got to be very orderly, and it's emitting a field. And the heart,
which it can do with stress.
Stress is static. Stress, you disconnect because all of your attention is going on everything physical and material, and you're drawing from this energy that's surrounding your body, and you're turning it into chemistry, and now you're isolated, you're separate. So we teach people how to get that brain coherence going and that heart coherence going, and coherence is rhythm and order. And now you have this Wi-Fi signal, and when there's a vibrational match, or you've synchronized your energy to synchronicity, those serendipities, those coincidences, those synchronicities, those opportunities start coming to you. Now, what's the cool part about that? It seems like there's a shortening of time between the thought of what you want and the experience of what you want, between cause and effect. When we create from the field instead of from matter, if we get really good at it, then the feedback that we experience in our life is letting us know that we're doing something correctly. And when you start getting the phone call or the email or the introduction to somebody, and you scratch your head and you go, oh my God, I'm the creator of my life. And all of a sudden, the next day, your belief in what's possible grows dramatically. So when you sit down to do it the next time, you get better at it. And all of a sudden, more synchronicities start to happen. And so the side effect of it is and this is what I'm proud of in our community, is that people do the work. They don't do it because they have to do it. They do it because they don't want the magic to end. They want the synchronicities to keep happening. Now, as a young adult like you, it's good to learn both. It's good to learn how to function in a three-dimensional world. But when you look at the advantage of creating what you want, that becomes the exciting part, because now you don't have to force and control outcomes. You just have to create from the field, and then you get up from your meditation. Then your job is to stay in that state, not to return back to where is it, it hasn't happened yet. You just return back to the old person, right? In separation. If you're living in the feeling of your future every single day, you would never look for it. Why would you look for it if it feels like it's already happened? That's when the magic starts to occur. So this is the experiment called life. And this experiment says that there's infinite possibilities that you get to experience and create. So the person who heals themselves of a chronic health condition, the next fundamental question would be, if I heal myself, can I heal somebody else? What's the science behind that? And now we know that that's possible. Now that you can heal somebody else, is it possible for the person to even be in the room? Can you do it when they're 2,500 miles away? If you understand the quantum and you build a model, you can produce effects non-locally. And now we're measuring that. So all of these possibilities that were once never even thought as possible, people understand are possible. And not only possible, they're witnessing the outcome. So we would never know what the next possibility could be until we have the experience. And that experience opens our mind to how many other possibilities can happen from that. And it's a never-ending process.
Yeah, I want to get into the concept just to get I know you're really passionate about the mystical, and that's something that I am very, very curious about. And I've heard you talk about how we can actually travel to these dimensions where that future self exists. How do you explain it when it's a dimensional thing?
Wow, okay. So in this realm called space-time, this three-dimensional reality, if you just look at the science behind space-time, there's an infinite amount of space. Space is eternal. There's no end to space, right? And as I said, we experience time moving through space. And we got to play by the rules of classical Newtonian physics. And the way that we create in three-dimensional reality is that you see someone that's got the nice sports car and you don't have it. And the moment you experience lack that you don't have it, but you want it, then the lack says, I got to get busy getting that.
Which is social media.
Yeah, of course.
Everything you feed yourself.
Yeah, to keep you consuming, to keep you interested, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. We found that when people really do take from someone to no one, from something to nothing, from somewhere to nowhere, from some time to no time, there are dramatic changes that take place in the brain and body, dramatic levels of order we start to see. There's a level of coherence, a synchronization that takes place in the nervous system. Now, if they do that properly, then we could say then, if you're not your body, if you're not anything you're identifying with in your environment, and you're not thinking about time, well, who are you? Your consciousness. You're aware of nothing. You're in this void, right? In this vacuum. Now, that realm that you pass into is fertile, as I said, with frequency, with information. Every thought has a frequency there. In this realm called time-space, it's inverse to space-time. The rules are completely different. There's nothing physical. It's frequency. It's energy. It's vibration. It's thought. It's consciousness. It's information. And connection. Everything is connected. There's no separation. It's unity. It's wholeness. It's oneness. Everything's connected to everything else. Now you got to change the way you think when you get to this place. So now, in time space, there's an infinite amount of time. Instead of space being eternal, time is eternal. So there's one infinite present moment, one eternal now. Okay, now let's think about that. If you had all the time in the world to get things done, how many things could you get done? Infinite.
Imagination.
Yeah, equal to your imagination. Well, that's the quantum. There's infinite possibilities everything all the time, right? So in the realm of space-time, we move through space from one point to another, and if we want to get there sooner, we move faster. We drive faster, we run faster, we do things faster. If we want to get there,
we work harder too.
Yeah, we work harder, right? You got to work hard, you got to fight for it, right? In this realm, there's nowhere to go. There's no space. So you're connected to everything. So here's the dichotomy. The way that we change our movement through time space is to change the thought or the frequency. And every past, present, and future possibility is all existing in the present moment. And that's a big one for people to wrap their mind around. So there are dimensions. We can move through times. We can travel through times, travel in a mystical moment to a childhood memory that defined you, and you can see yourself as your adult self and have compassion for that child and get the understanding that that child didn't have at that time, and it'll change your biology in a second. The person who...
Because you're connected to that past.
You are that past. You are it, but you're not seeing it as the 7-year-old child. You're seeing it as an integrated adult called Emilio saying, God, I love that kid. That's not the truth. He just saw it that way. It wasn't his fault. He wasn't responsible for that. Oh my God. And now, somehow the memory is replaced from a greater level of consciousness. The person who has been abused physically, sexually, emotionally, who has suicidal tendencies, severe depression, anxiety and panic attacks, endometriosis, weird hormonal things, all because of molestation and abuse in the past. In the present moment, they can see their past from a greater level of consciousness and have such a moment of pure love that they don't want to change anything in their past. They think it's perfect for them now because it brought them to that moment of ecstasy, that moment of freedom. Now, as you change your thought or your frequency, you can move forward in time too. And in forward in time, there's an infinite number of possible yous that also exist as potentials. So when a person has a mystical moment, they're actually accessing information from the field that's very relevant to them. Now, here's the cool part about it. The person is moving into brainwave states that are so elegant, so coherent, so supernatural, so outside of normal, that they could never make their brain do that. It's actually happening to them. And we capture this. And the amount of energy in the brain, from a statistical standpoint, according to mathematics, if you read the articles, they'll say the probability of that brainwave state happening is pretty much impossible mathematically. But if it did occur, it would occur as a momentary phenomenon that would last a millisecond. And here we have somebody sustaining this state for 15 minutes. You know something big is going on for that person. Now, there's an arousal that takes place in the nervous system when this occurs. But the arousal isn't fear. The arousal isn't pain. The arousal isn't anger. The arousal is ecstasy. The arousal is bliss. The arousal is connection. It's ineffable. There's no word to describe this feeling of oneness or wholeness. Now, that is a very powerful signal that's coming to the body, but it's not coming from the outer environment. It's not coming from a girlfriend. It's not coming from a sports car. It's not coming from a wardrobe or a football game. It's not coming from anything out there. It's coming from within you, right? And so when a person learns how to slow their brainwaves down and they move from the beta brainwave state, we're in beta right now, we're conscious and aware that we're in three-dimensional reality. Tiger runs through the room here. We move into high beta. That's an alarm. We're fear. We have our heightened senses, right? Our senses are heightened. There's danger. Our body gets a rush of adrenaline. We feel like our bodies, our attention is on the environment. That's where the danger is. And we got a certain amount of time to get from here to there. And we're going to move as fast as we can. Now, That's what stress and survival does. And people spend 70% of their life living in this state, right? So then you teach people then a formula to learn how to slow their brainwaves down from beta to alpha. And when they do that, they cross the analytical mind. They stop thinking and analyzing. And in alpha, the voice in your head goes away. And instead of hearing that chatter, in alpha, you're more creative. You see in images and pictures. It's a state of imagination, right? It's a creative state. But if you're in survival all the time, it's not a time to create. So it's not a time to disconnect from your environment. There's danger out there, right? So, but if you teach people the formula on how to do that, they move into alpha. And they move out of that high beta state. When you're in high beta, what you're doing is you're perceiving that there's a danger, a threat, that it could get worse. You can't predict what's going to happen. You can't control what's going to happen. And the alarm system switches on. And then you're trying to control everything in your life. You're shifting your attention from one person, to another object, to another thing, to another place, to another meeting, to another text. And every one of those elements that make up your identity, that's identifying with your three-dimensional reality, has a neurological network. So like a lightning storm in the brain, the arousal distress hormones causes your brain to fire out of order. Very incoherent. You lose your Wi-Fi signal. There's static, right? And we're separate now. The heart, which is pumping and racing because there's a tiger, or at least from a primitive perspective, we're believing there's a tiger in the room, but what if it's just your coworker or your relative? And now the heart is pumping blood against a closed system. You're not running, you're not fighting, and you're not hiding. And the incoherence in the brain and the heart, when the waves come together, when they're out of order, they're destructive, and we lose energy in our brain and our heart. So we can't think, we can't trust, we can't dream. The heart is the creative center, right? So now the person is completely out of order. They're narrowing or over-focusing on all the things that they're obsessing about that could be the next moment where that could happen again. When a person broadens their focus and they start to slow their brainwaves down and move into alpha, by putting their attention on that frequency, on that energy, on nothing, there's an entrainment that starts to happen in the brain, and the brain starts to synchronize. And different parts of the brain that were once firing out of order, larger communities start to form together, and what syncs in the brain links in the brain. So all of a sudden you see the brain going, the whole entire brain, on the same rhythm, on the same wavelength. The person's experiencing wholeness, right? If you could teach a person how to actually allow their body to start to fall asleep, but at the same time they stay awake, that's called theta. And in theta, that's a very hypnotic state. The door between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind is wide open to information. Now here's the relevant part. The person in their meditation is not getting information from their environment. Their eyes are closed. There's music playing in the background. They're not eating, they're not tasting, they're not smelling, they're not feeling and touching. Where's the information coming from? Well, when they move into theta, if their body can move into a light sleep while they stay conscious and awake, and they're suggestible to information, but the information isn't coming from the environment, there's only one other place information can come from, and that's from the field. Because everything that's frequency in that field carries information. So when the person puts their attention on frequency, all of a sudden when there's a resonance between the brain, or harmonic between the brain and the field, the brain starts asking information from the quantum field, and the person has a full-on sensory experience without their senses. They move to another dimension. And when I say full-on sensory experience without their senses, I mean it's more real than this, where we're sitting right now. So think about this. If your senses were heightened by 30% right now, everything you were seeing, everything you were hearing, everything you were smelling, everything you were tasting, everything you were feeling, if your senses were heightened by 30%, your awareness of everything around you would be heightened, right? Awareness is consciousness, and you can't have consciousness without energy. So we see these dramatic changes of energy in the brain. We know the person's connecting, and the arousal is activating a little gland in the back of the brain called the pineal gland that acts like a radio receiver. It literally has crystals in it that's transducing. They call it a transducer.
In our brain.
Right in the back of your brain. It's transducing like a radio receiver, like a TV antenna. It's taking that frequency and de-encoding it, de-scrambling it into profound imagery. And the person is all of a sudden in a whole nother space and a whole nother time. And they're not wearing this costume to the masquerade. They're in another world. And so think about this. Full-on sensory experience without your senses, more real than the realm that you're currently in.
Without any external.
Without no exogenous substances, no plant medicine, no nothing. The derivatives that are made from the pineal gland fit into the same receptor sites as serotonin and melatonin, but they're an upgraded version of melatonin. Now, melatonin already causes you to dream, but now you are going to lucid dream. Melatonin already causes you to relax. You're going to make a benzodiazepine that's going to shut off all the survival centers, and your brain's going to make Valium. You're going to be chillaxing. Melatonin's already an antioxidant, anti-aging, anti-heart disease, anti-stroke. And all of a sudden now, you're going to produce two derivatives, the most powerful antioxidants known to man. Take the molecule, tweak it again, and the same chemical is found in hibernating animals. Hibernation, body goes into stasis, no sex drive, no appetite, no preoccupation with the environment. The body now, you don't even know you have a body. Take the molecule, tweak it again, and you get the same chemical found in electric eels. What's that have to do with anything? Well, electric eel has an enormous amplitude of energy in their nervous system, and we get these high amplitudes. Now, the person has experienced a whole nother aspect of themselves, the unknown self. Not the self that you're aware of, the unknown self that is dimensional. And the biggest lie that we've ever been told is that we're linear beings living a linear life. We are dimensional beings living a dimensional life. Now, that experience is being recorded in the brain. That's what experience does. The emotion that the person is feeling, the arousal of ecstasy, the arousal of bliss, it's not coming from out there. The person is awakening to this feeling, right? And the side effect of this transformative moment, this transcendental moment, is an upgrade in our biology. Sometimes you see the eczema on the person's skin they had for 10 years, then it's gone.
It's gone.
You see the Parkinson's, then it's gone. The person's been blind from a stroke for the last 2 years, they're seeing now. The person's been deaf for 10 years because of a rattlesnake bite, they're hearing again.
Did they come with the intention to heal that specific?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But what's happening is lights are out in the thinking neocortex and the autonomic nervous system, the limbic brain. That's where those high amplitudes of energy are happening. And the autonomic nervous system controls and coordinates all other systems. It touches every other cell in the body. So now you have a faster frequency, a more coherent frequency, and the frequency that's traveling through the autonomic nervous system is carrying information from the field of holism, of oneness, and it's jiggling the cell, and all the cell does is emit more coherent light and information, and the person in that moment is transformed by energy. Energy is informing matter. So now, when that person comes back to their identity, when they come back to Emilio, since experience enriches the brain, and we don't see things how they are, we see things how we are, that inner experience broadens their spectrum of reality. They see things that they never saw before because their brain wasn't wired to perceive it. At the same time, the feeling that they feel, and we've mapped this in the brain, the area of the brain that gets very excited during this moment is an area that creates long-term memories that are associated with love, joy, and bliss. The person is not in any pain at all. And that feeling tends to replace the guilt, the sorrow, the loss, the grief. In one instant, the person feels like they're a different person. So my interest is in demystifying that process. Why? Because science says that we perceive 1% of reality. Now, don't exclude yourself from that formula. You are part of reality. So when the person has this discovery that they're not this person, that there's infinite possibilities that they could live in or exist in, it changes the game dramatically. You cannot go back to business as usual because you're discovering some aspect of yourself that you were unaware of because you were living in three-dimensional reality. So when we've been mapping this in our studies, we now know how to induce the state. We know how to predict it on a brain scan. I can say, oh, this person's about ready to have a moment, and we can replicate it. And so we're teaching people how to actually access information from the field for that transcendental moment, right? And that's the pineal gland is the connection between the physics of the quantum field and the biology of the brain and body. And it's a latent system in the brain that we teach that once activated. If you look at, we looked at 1,000 people, we're measuring intelligence or height or weight or whatever, you see the same bell curve, right? And you divide it in 3, and then as it gets down towards the bottom, there's less people here, really great eyesight, really poor eyesight. 3 standard deviations outside of normal, you're really good. Like you're the Michael Jordan, right? You're the Tiger Woods, you're in that small percent. 3 standard deviations, that's really great at something. This is 300 standard deviations. That's another 297 of those past that point. That's the amount of energy that's going on in this guy's brain. And he's hooked up. He's touching the divine. I mean, he's not separate any longer. He's hooked up. And the information that the brain is downloading is telling him that the past, present, and future all makes sense. It's right there. He sees the whole thing. He's not in the labyrinth of life. He's looking down at the labyrinth of life, and he's seeing it from another dimension. Yeah. Now, I don't know about you, but all you need is one of those, and you just can't go back to being the same person again. You know so much.
Yeah. And it's like, well, if you think of humanity as an organism, and each one of us are just cells in that organism, one person awakens, one person has this transcendental experience. Like, you were living this in your in-person events. Like, what is the energy like in those events?
Yeah. So it's a really great question because we're studying that now. So in the beginning, we started studying the collective energy of the room. And every single event that we've done, the energy from that event, the next one we do is greater than the previous one. And we started seeing this scale of energy going up in the room dramatically. Then we thought, okay, well, how does it affect people? You know, how does it really affect people? It's like 1,000 people, put them in a room, teach them how to elevate their energy, open their heart, put 50 people in the front of the room wearing heart rate monitors. And they're just sitting there. And the rest of the room is having the intent that the people wearing those heart rate monitors, that their lives be enriched, that their bodies be healed, that their dreams come true, that the mystic will find them. Just for 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
And at the exact same time, the exact same day, in the exact same meditation, all those people that are wearing those heart rate monitors, their heart goes into coherence. Yeah. So all of a sudden there's non-local effects. Now, what's the significance of that? You get a collective group of people. That's not the number of people, with like a stadium full of people cheering. That's a lot of energy, but it's entropic, it's misdirected, it's disorderly. A smaller collective network that's more coherent with brain and heart coherence, stronger signal, greater effects. So what we did was we started using these sophisticated random event generators. Random event generator, okay, a sophisticated coin toss. You toss a coin, and it's heads or tails, and if you keep tossing it, the more you toss it, if you toss it for the whole entire day, because there's only 50-50, the more you toss it, the more it looks like it's going to be 50-50, right? So those are random. You can't control that because that's just the flip of a coin. So they have these computer programs where they do the exact same thing. They randomly are recording heads or tails, ones or zeros. And the coin is tossed 1,000 times in 1 second. So it's a lot of random moments. So you get a collective network of people together with brain and heart coherence. And what we've discovered is that the influence of random events go from being random to becoming more intentional. In other words, what we're seeing is that all of a sudden it's no longer random. That we have 1,000 people in the room or 2,000 people in the room. The energy of the room is actually affecting random events to become more intentional. So now, how are we going to change the world? How are we? It's not enough to just do a peace gathering project in a city where crime rates go down, violence go down, there's economic growth, less car accidents. Great, that's a great thing when you're measuring it, but when the meditators leave, after a period of time, it just returns back to normal. It's not enough to just focus on peace. It's time to live the prayer. It's time to demonstrate peace. So then, it turns out the brain actually synchronizes with people you hang out with. People who call it with people you're with. You start behaving like them. You start thinking. Your brain actually looks like their brain. So you get a collective network of observers all hanging out together and focusing on some really big things, and they know brain and heart coherence. They can cause seemingly random events to become more intentional without really having to, protest or whatever. You change the field, and you get enough of them doing that, and you start producing outcomes.
Wow. So that's amazing. And we're literally creating a new human right now as we speak. Your book, Becoming Supernatural. We see what is possible with what you guys are studying, what you guys are uncovering in these events, in your meditations. I wanted to ask you, right now, as you begin to observe how these people are tapping into these states, radical healing, intuition, the remote healing from different parts of the world, what is, what are we creating right now? We're getting a biological upgrade, but what are some of these capabilities that we're tapping into that we're going to see in the years ahead?
God, Emilio, it's such a great question. It's so funny because if you asked me this question, Joe Dispenza, 2 years ago, I would have said, yeah, we probably see a little of this, a little of that. But in our events, it's not uncommon for someone to stand on the stage and say, I was blind and now I'm seeing, I'm deaf, now I'm hearing. I had stage 4 cancer that spread to my bones, my liver, my lungs. So we had a cancer researcher on the stage just last week. Cancer researcher with a very, very aggressive sarcoma in her uterus. The prognosis is poor. She was unresponsive to every treatment. She's a cancer researcher. She starts doing the work. All of the cancer that spread to all of her organs and bones completely gone. Cancer in the uterus completely gone. She has no sign of cancer. So she discovered the cure for cancer, and it wasn't anything out there. She discovered it within her. She has no evidence of cancer in her body. Now, metastatic cancer, when it spreads to bones or to organs, typically, very rarely does that reverse, right? So now you're seeing someone reverse a stage 4 cancer, and that's becoming the new normal in our work. People are actually understanding that it is possible because they're witnessing it. That's one side. We've done such extensive measurements on brain states. We've had over 18,000 brain scans. We've studied hearts when you're anxious, when you're resentful, when you're impatient, when you're frustrated, compared to a heart that is loving and kind and caring and grateful. It's a very different experience for the heart, and we want our students to be able to do that on a consistent basis. We've seen immune systems get stronger by changing fear to gratitude by 50% in 4 days. We partnered with the University of California, San Diego recently, and we started studying thousands and thousands of biological markers in the blood of people during meditation. Now, we have such great evidence to show that there's something very profound that happens when a person has a transcendental moment and they have an interaction with energy, when they hit those elegant states. they sometimes come to events as sick. We draw their blood at the beginning of their event, and we see what happens to their brain, we see what happens to their heart, and we know this person has had a profound moment, and we draw their blood and we measure everything afterwards. If we take the plasma of those individuals as an example, and we take a pseudovirus that looks just like SARS-CoV-2, or we actually take, now recently, we actually did the actual SARS virus, and we put that virus in the presence of that person, that advanced meditator that had that transcendental moment, there's a consistent resistance to the virus. The virus cannot enter the cell of that person. In people that are novice meditators, they come to a week-long event, some of the virus enters their cell and some of the virus stays out, so there's somewhat of an immunity. In all the controls, they get infected. All right, so we know now that there's some agent, some cofactor in the blood when a person has this moment. So we've gone through some extensive scientific studies, and we actually isolated the very protein that stops the virus from entering the cell. And if we take that protein and we put it in the infected plasma of the controls, all of the infected controls become uninfected. Now, we're not getting that from anywhere out there. We're actually finding it in someone who has had a moment where they've interacted with oneness, with wholeness. And whether there's some change in energy in the blood and there's some proteins being released, but we're starting to discover there's some powerful agents when this occurs. Take the blood of that advanced meditator and take their plasma and put it in a uterine cancer cell. And the cancer cells, the mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cells, are switched on and they're pumping out a lot of energy. That's why they're almost immortal. If we take the blood of the advanced meditator and we subject it to a uterine cancer cell, 75% of the energy comes out of the mitochondria. It takes the wind out of the cells. Take the plasma of the same advanced meditator and put it on a neuron that has Alzheimer's and produces the amyloid protein, and there's a significant change in the gene expression of the Alzheimer gene. Take that person then and subject their blood to the variants, the lambda variant, the delta variant, the beta variant, and the same thing occurs. They're resistant to the virus. Now, what does that mean? Okay, if you really think about this, it would suggest that there's very dramatic environmental changes taking place from a scientific standpoint. Anybody who sees this kind of gene expression change or change in biology, they would say, oh my God, it suggests that there's a dramatic change in the environment. The problem is the person is sitting in a ballroom, in a hotel. There's not a lot of things going on in a ballroom in a hotel. It's not a changing environment. Where is all that change coming from? Information from the field. So we have great testimony in our community of people that have reversed all kinds of things, and people have created all kinds of wealth and created all kinds of mystical moments. And we have really great evidence in our scientific studies, and evidence is the loudest voice. It is the voice that makes the biggest difference. So, what kind of human being then, who has trained themselves to no longer be victim to their environment? If I said to you, Emilio, what's up with you today? And you say, oh, I'm sad because of this person or this circumstance. I would say, oh, you mean that person or that circumstance is controlling the way you feel and the way you think. Well, anything that's controlling the way you feel and the way you think, you're victim to. So then, when things are good, you feel good. When things are bad, you feel bad, right? And if you feel bad, then you look for something out there to make this feeling go away. But then when the novelty or the event is over, here comes that feeling again, and you got to go chase something else. Well, the response for many people to their environment is actually weakening their body. The stress response, they react to some event, and their reaction to the event is actually weakening the organism. Now, short term, it's cool. All organisms can handle that. But the long-term effects of that just diminishes or taps the body's resources of vital energy. There's no energy to heal. There's no energy for growth and repair. So what we're suggesting is that when the person becomes less victim to their environment and realizing that they're more of the creator of their environment, and their response to the environment weakens them less because they know how to self-regulate and change, they'll be less susceptible to things in their environment, large or small. And creating a life that is meaningful for a person, someone as young as you, and you start seeing that you're actually creating it, every time you get feedback, a breadcrumb from the universe saying, Emilio, keep going, keep your head down, keep going, you're going to run into something big. All of those things are convincing you that you are not the victim to your life, that you're actually the creator of your life. And people who actually do this, it's not that you react. The question is how long you react. And teaching people how to move out of those states and back into homeostasis, back into balance by self-regulating with their eyes open, getting so good at doing it in their meditation with their eyes closed that they could actually do it with their eyes open in their life. Now it's a different game. So get enough people in the world becoming less reactive to their environment. They're less controlled by their environment. And the side effect of that is there's a huge change in our biology, huge. I could say right now with certainty, I can say that if people commit to, say, as an example, 7 days of an event that we do, I can say there will be so many biological changes that take place in our body. We have the evidence that says that. We have such profound hope for humanity in what we're discovering.
Wow, this interview, I don't really know if I would call it an interview. This has been a journey, and thank you for speaking your truth. Thank you for doing the work you do. I have a couple wrap-up questions, sure, really geared toward the younger generations, the leaders of the future. And before that, I just wanted just to know, where can people dive into your work deeper? You've mentioned your events. We have the books. We'll put everything in the links in the bio. But where would you say is the main direction you would send people for your work?
Gosh, I think, the website's Dr.Dispenza.com, and we have a new course called The Formula. It's 12, episodes, 30, 40 minutes with 5 meditations. Good beginning level, get into it. But the real magic is our week-long events. I mean, that's where you see profound miracles. And so to do a week-long event, you have to do the intensive and progressive workshops as a preparation. So the online course is a good preparation. You learn the basics there. But we run these big events around the world because I really think there's something that happens when you get a group of people together in 3-dimensional reality. All colors, all shapes, all sizes, all ages. We have 7-year-old kids and we have 91-year-old people. We had 76 different countries come to the event we did in Turkey a couple weeks ago. So we have a huge global community. What's come out of that, Emilio, that's been so moving for me is this youth community. We have hundreds and hundreds of kids now under the age of 25 or 26 that come to our events, and they come in legions. And I love this because they're not seduced by the world like everybody else. They want to find out answers. They're interested in important conversations. I want them to understand that there's a neuroscience of culture and that there's a neuroscience of leadership. And when you can teach people that neuroscience, they can lead properly and they can change a culture can understand what true cultural change means. And it's not anything different that any other cultural leader did, whether it was Nelson Mandela or the Dalai Lama or Mahatma Gandhi or William Wallace or whoever it was. There's a biology to personal change and transformation. So we have this emerging youth that has to resolve the problems that have been created by this past generation from a greater level of consciousness. And that means when everybody else is angry and everybody else is frustrated, you're going to have to show compassion. And when everybody else is fearful and worried, you're going to have to show courage. When everybody else is racing and rushing and competing to succeed and climbing over each other to get to the top, you're going to have to learn how to be in the present moment and draw it to you. And I think if you do that in the beginning, it feels unnatural because everybody else is doing something else. But how do we become supernatural unless we start doing the things that feel unnatural? So anger is not going to resolve it. That's actually what's created. Prejudice is not going to resolve it. That's what's created it. Greed is not going to resolve it. That's what actually has created it. And so we're in a time right now, right before our eyes, we're watching the world in many ways experience such extreme polarity that the wobbling of polarity is breaking the system, right? And it's creating chaos. There's disorder. Chaos is no longer the known. We're in a big unknown right now. So when there's brain and heart coherence, God, we have such incredible data. If I trained you on how to do that, you could be running around doing 1,000 different things, and I could say, Emilio, sit down. You got 15 minutes to synchronize your heart to your brain. We do this all the time. Whether the young guy is running around chasing his 1-year-old, 2-year-old kid, one of my staff is running around doing 1,000 different things, sit down. They sit down, and all of a sudden, music starts, and you see them start moving in, and all of a sudden you see this beautiful low frequency take place in the heart. And once we see that and it starts to build, you see the parasympathetic nervous system go up, which means they're relaxing, and then the parasympathetic nervous system goes down and the sympathetic nervous system goes up. And all of a sudden the brain moves into those gamma patterns, and that person, the heart is informing the brain. The heart is telling the brain it's safe to create. The heart is giving the brain information. We actually see this. Now,
The heart has intelligence.
the brain thinks, but the heart knows. So all of a sudden the heart says, Emilio, it's time to create. You're out of survival. And you get these incredible ideas. You get the mystical moment. You get the understanding. You get the download. You get whatever that is. People can do that now on command. Now, why is that important? Because most people are stressed, in survival, and unconscious in a program, and racing and rushing to try to make that feeling of emptiness or pain go away, and they're lost in the illusion of separation, thinking they need the outer environment to do it. Chaos is happening. You got to be the eye of the storm. You got to be relaxed and out of survival and awake. And heart and brain coherence means relaxed and awake. So then we take our youth, and we're investing in our youth right now because they're going to be the leaders of our future. We want to teach them what leadership truly is from the heart. We want to teach them how to make changes that are permanent. We want them to consider the whole. We want them to come up with ideas that we will be interested in supporting and backing, that will create that kind of cultural change that takes place. And most importantly, that they get along with one another. I mean, why can't we just get along with each other? Take away all the governments, take away all the different cultures, and you see people you see art events, 1,000 people, 2,000 people, all races, all cultures. We all get along. Everybody loves everybody. I mean, that's who we innately are. Yeah. Now, you get a collective group of people together and they start healing other people remotely. I want that person who's been healed. I want that person, when they report their healing, we have everybody sign the day where they were in that healing. I want to be able to call you up and say, Emilio, you were one of the 8 people or 7 people that healed that person of cancer. You're one of the ones that did that, right? Now, there's an empathy that takes place in human beings. It's beautiful. It's so deep when you're part of someone else's change. That's what the tribe does. That's what the species of human beings should be doing when they're not in survival. We should be informing one another. We should be supporting one another. We should be honoring one another. We should be healing one another. We should be shining for one another to show others that they can shine. That's who human beings are. That's the way this culture, the way the species is going to have to unify during a time of incredible chaos, because community is the future, and we're investing in our youth, and we're investing in their community, and we're going to groom them to be leaders. We're going to groom them to be the eye of the storm, to be relaxed and awake, present and conscious instead of unconscious and stressed in the program. We're like everybody else. And so if you're no longer seduced by your emotions and you know how to control them, you'll be very selective to information. And while the flock is going that way, you may be looking the other way. And that's what I want enough people to do.
And that's the call of action right now. I think that's what you're really speaking into. And I wanted to just ask you these last couple of questions. We're trying something new. I'm going to call them, let's say for now, the trio. And the first one that I wanted to ask you is, what impact or wisdom do you want to leave on the young generation and future leaders of the world?
Yeah. Wow. I think that the demonstration of greatness is so important right now. People are looking for it and they can't find it anywhere. And we can't wait. You cannot wait for someone else to lead. You got to show people what compassion looks like. You got to show them what kindness looks like. You got to show them what equality looks like. You got to celebrate successes in others. We have to be that all the time so that we give people permission to do the same, right? So my hope is that if we can change individuals one by one, we're going to change the world. And that's it. And at the end of a 1 week long event, I would say that 99% of the people that come to that week-long event are not the same person that got there. Now, when they go back into their life, and all of a sudden, they're not doing anything differently, but people say to them all the time, what's up with you? What happened to you? You got a new drug? You got a new girlfriend? You got a boyfriend? What's going on? No, nothing. Because they're at a phase. The memory of that person is not matching the projection of what they see in front of them. They're at a phase, right? So you get enough people remembering that they're the creators of their life, that they actually do control their emotions, that they actually have the ability, no matter who they are, to create the life they want. And just making the time to do it is so important. So I have great hope at this time in the world right now that all the things that are falling apart have to fall apart, and our youth are going to be our leaders, and we have to demonstrate. We're going to teach them how to demonstrate what that looks like, and they have to be impeccable when they do it.
Yeah, that was beautiful. And what would be one supernatural ability that you would invite the next generation to practice, develop, and act with in their daily lives?
Oh, relaxed and awake. Instead of unconscious and stressed. Relaxed and awake. Heart and brain coherence. It's an elegant dance, because when the heart is informing the brain, the information that's coming from the heart is not coming from a television commercial. It's not coming from social media. It's not coming from news. It's not coming. That information is not where you're getting. Your heart is informing the brain, and it's an elegant dance. And so, when your heart gives you that information that's relevant to you, you will know exactly which way to move. And you won't need anybody to tell you. You will know. So I would love for that to become a skill and to be so good at it that you can do it with your eyes open as well as your eyes closed.
What is one universal law that you have found to be most undervalued or misunderstood by most people?
That we are all connected to this invisible field of energy, and the problem is if you're unaware of it, it doesn't exist for you. Just like when you're unaware of your nose, it doesn't exist for you. But the moment you become aware of it, it exists. So how much of our waking day do we put our attention on the material world, on matter? And how much of our waking day do we put our attention on energy and information? Practicing every day, connecting to that invisible field. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. We are fish in water asking for a drink. So then by practicing connecting to that field, every time a person can feel it, notice it, experience it, pay attention to it, relax into it, surrender to it, become it. Every experience that they have with it makes connections in their brain for them to perceive more of it. And if you get enough networks of neurons firing and like that, you will feel connected to it. So practicing creating and connecting is so essential. Our senses fool us into the hallucination of this illusion of separation. Practicing putting your attention on energy instead of matter. I swear to you, it's real. And the more you do it, the more you interact with it, the more the universe conspires in your favor.
The Alchemist quote. I love that. Dr. Joe, this has been such a pleasure, such a treat to be here with you. From my generation to yours, thank you for being a leader. Thank you for going out of your own way to heal people, to teach people these methods to go within themselves. And I think it's really special what we're all learning from you, from your wisdom, from your energy. I think we can all feel it in this room. You can definitely feel that energy, and I know that you're living your truth, you're living the truth. So I appreciate you so much. Best of love, best of luck on everything that you're doing. And I would love to do this again sometime and just go deeper into these amazing concepts.
And thank you for the work that you're doing, because you're changing the world also. I mean, giving people the right information, you know, and the right use of information, that righteousness, you know, is what we need. And so you're contributing to the whole, and that's admirable. You're doing great, bro. You're gonna be so good if you keep this up.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're gonna do so good if you keep this up. Yeah, bro.
Thank you.
Enjoy and experience your inner silence. Go into distance to an object. Direct your attention into your heart. Notice that something changes. And then, very important, enjoy this silence. Smile happily like a Buddha. When thoughts capture your attention, repeat these steps. Try to keep your silence throughout the video.